This video is sponsored by Brilliant. The first 200 people to go to brilliant.org/polyphonic will get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Music has always been an escape for those on the fringes of society. Outcasts, oddballs, and the oppressed have always found refuge in song. And there are few groups that have been marginalized over the past century more than trans people. While we're starting to see more emergence of transgender musicians today, there's actually a long history of transgender people making waves in popular music, and of songs about transgender people helping to shape popular music. Let's take a closer look. One of the earliest trans figures in popular music was Christine Jorgenson. Raised as a boy, Jorgenson fought for the US Army in World War II. After returning from service, she transitioned in the early 1950s and became a nightclub performer and actress. As a musician, she released a few singles, including Crazy Little Men.
Me a planet flying, Cadillac, told the driver to rack 'em back.
While she never reached superstardom, Jorgenson made some headlines in her day and provided a groundwork for trans representation in popular music. Another one of the earliest visible trans figures in popular music was Jackie Shane. Shane was an American soul singer who worked through the Canadian soul scene of the 1960s and even scored a charting hit with Any Other Way in 1967.
Tell her I wouldn't have it any other way.
After a few years in the limelight, she turned down an invitation to join Funkadelic and disappeared from the spotlight. As Shane was working in the 60s, the discussion started to shift around the nature of gender and sexuality thanks to the sexual revolution, and voices in queer groups were getting louder. In the midst of this world, The Who had their own take on gender on 1966's I'm a Boy. Set in a future world where parents can choose the sex of their children, that song tells of a family who order 4 girls, but get a boy. They decide to raise this child as a girl, even though he keeps insisting he's a boy. While it's not your typical take on a trans story, many trans people will relate to the story of parents insisting a child is one gender, while feeling deep inside they are something different. This also shows how the concepts of sex and gender were starting to enter public consciousness. And soon many of the public's assumptions of sex and gender would be challenged thanks to the stars of Andy Warhol's Factory. Andy Warhol helped bring a number of transgender actresses and artists into the public eye, including Candy Darling and Holly Woodlawn. Also in Warhol's circles were the Velvet Underground, who wrote songs about these Warhol superstars. Perhaps the most famous of these is Lou Reed's Walk on the Wild Side, but I've always found 1969's Candy Says to be a particularly striking account of a transgender woman. The opening lyrics of that song make it one of the first pieces of popular music to talk about gender dysphoria, a condition that many trans people suffer from. Gender dysphoria is the dissonance that comes when one's emotional and psychological identity don't align with their assigned sex. You can feel Lou Reed singing that dissonance from Candy's perspective. Lou Reed ran in the same circles as another musician who questioned and pushed the boundaries of gender, David Bowie. Bowie was on the forefront of the glam rock movement, which sought to challenge expectations of gender, sexuality, and identity. Lady Stardust sings of a cross-dressing singer, while Rebel Rebel sings proudly of androgyny, becoming an anthem of sorts for the movement. 2 years after releasing Rebel Rebel, David Bowie would enter into a relationship with a trans woman who would help shape the future of music. Romy Haag was a Dutch performer who opened her own cabaret in 1974 in Berlin. That venue became iconic in the mid-70s, with names like Freddie Mercury, Mick Jagger, Lou Reed, and, of course, David Bowie frequenting it. And so Romy Haag helped make Berlin a musical epicenter in the 70s, and she's part of the reason David Bowie spent some of his most productive years in Berlin. Around this time, Europe saw more trans visibility in their pop stars. Marie-France was a transgender film star in the 1970s and 80s in France, and she also had a music career that included the 1977 single Daisy.
Daisy, enfile ses beurres ici, Daisy.
Over the next few decades, a number of songs would pop up questioning the nature of gender. In 1983, the Waterboys wrote A Girl Called Johnny, and while they wrote it in tribute to Patti Smith, its lyrics can be read as a clear trans story.
Changed her name when she discovered her choice was to change.
In 1984, the Replacements wrote Androgynous, a song about androgyny and gender identity.
He's wearing a skirt. Here comes Jane, you know she's sporting a chain.
That song clearly tapped into something, as a number of other artists have covered it since. In 1991, the Crash Test Dummies covered it and released it as a single. The video for their version of that song even featured a number of people challenging gender norms in it. And then in the early 2000s, rock legend Joan Jett gave her own take on Androgynous. Joan Jett would go on to cover that song again, this time alongside one of modern music's great trans icons, Laura Jane Grace. Born Thomas James Gable, Grace is the lead singer of Against Me. Throughout her career, Grace had a painful public struggle with her gender identity. In Against Me's The Ocean, she even sings that she would have been born a woman if she had a choice. Then in 2012, Grace publicly came out as a transgender woman and began her transition. She documented this experience in Against Me's 6th studio album, Transgender Dysphoria Blues. That was a monumental album when it came to trans history. It was a full piece written by a trans artist about her experiences on a public stage. And this is a trend that's coming more into the forefront. In the modern day, trans people have more of a voice than ever, and this is reflected in the music scene. Across all of music, we have artists challenging traditional notions of gender and identity in their music. Lucas Silveira became the first trans man to sign with a major record label in 2006 and has continued to make music since. Then there's Shay Diamond, a trans singer who wrote her own personal anthem, I Am Her.
There's an outcast in everybody's life, and I am her.
And there's transgender people across all musical genres, from the folk of Skylar Kurgil to Anoni's art pop. Even opera has its own trans icon now, with Brianna Sinclair, who became the first transgender woman to sing the national anthem at a pro sporting event in 2015. Transgender people have made countless contributions to music history. They've been the subject of and creators of songs that have shaped the current musical world. And as more trans musicians emerge, they'll help push music into a brighter future by bringing their own stories, experiences, and songs to the world. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. This is a topic that was really close to my heart, so I'm glad I could make it happen. If you like watching my channel, there's a good chance you're into learning new things, and one of the best ways to learn new things is with Brilliant. Brilliant is a site that helps you master complex topics by solving fun, challenging problems. With their daily problems, Brilliant can give you a window into the worlds of math, science, engineering, or computer science. In the past month, people have learned whether it's better to walk or run in windy rain, discovered how gerrymandering can bias elections, and learned to bake delicious cheese biscuits with computer science. Daily problems are a fun way to pass some of your time on your daily commute and to make sure you're always learning something new. Each problem comes with illustrations, animations, or visualizations that help you solve the problem. And if you find out that you like solving one of these daily problems, you can explore its related course in depth. If you want to give this all a shot, head on over to brilliant.org/polyphonic. Not only will that show support for my channel, but the first 200 viewers to follow that link will get 20% off the annual premium subscription. So please go check it out and learn something new today.